Welcome to our 2025 CLDA webinar series. I'm Emily Wrinkle, Meetings Manager for CLDA. Today's webinar is Unlock the Power of Modern Last Mile Technology. Is your supply chain ready for the change? Couple of reminders before we get started. The Customized Logistics and Delivery Association believes that information about products and services that could benefit the first, middle, and final mile industry should be made available to members to help them make informed decisions about their business practices. As such, reference to specific products, services, companies, organizations, or claims made in advertisements or sponsored opportunities through any CLDA medium or event, including but not limited to CLDA emails, the CLDA website, webinars, Final Mile Forum, or other CLDA-affiliated events, does not constitute endorsement, recommendation, or favoring by CLDA, and nor does exclusion suggest disapproval. This session is audio and video recorded, and your participation confirms your consent to this recording. We will facilitate Q&A at the end of the presentation, but please feel free to submit your questions in the questions box at any time throughout the presentation. I'd like to take a moment to thank our 2025 annual sponsors for supporting CLDA. In our President's Circle, thank you OpenForce. In the Champions Circle, thank you Key Software Systems, Risk Strategies, SCI, and WCA E-commerce Solutions. As a Future of CLDA sponsor, thank you 24/7 Enterprises LLC. If you're interested in learning more about how you can become an annual sponsor for 2026, please reach out to info@clda.org for more information. I now have the pleasure of introducing today's speaker. Guru is a driving force behind nuVizz Inc., where he leads the development of innovative solutions that transform logistics and supply chain operations. With over 2 decades of expertise in enterprise software and technology, Guru has spearheaded advancements in real-time visibility, workforce management, and route optimization, helping businesses achieve operational excellence. Under his leadership, nuVizz has become a trusted partner for businesses worldwide, delivering cutting-edge solutions in real-time visibility, workforce management, and route optimization. Guru's deep expertise in leveraging emerging technologies such as AI, IoT, and machine learning has enabled nuVizz to redefine efficiency and sustainability in the supply chain. A passionate advocate for collaborative growth and technological progress, Guru is committed to mentoring teams and fostering a culture of innovation. Guru, we thank you for being here today, and I will turn things over to you.
Awesome. Let me share my screen. Okay, here. All right. Let me. Emily, can you see the screen?
Swap your views again.
Okay. All
There
right.
we go. Yep.
Awesome. Thanks, Emily. Appreciate it. Appreciate the intro, and thanks for the opportunity. Hello, everyone. My name is Guru Rao. I'm the founder and CEO of nuVizz, an Atlanta, Georgia-based organization specializing in last mile transportation management technology solution. Just to give you a little more background about myself, spent 30 years in the supply chain, logistics, transportation space, building technologies, implementing technologies, designing supply chain strategies for literally hundreds of shippers across the world and thousands of carrier locations everywhere. And as part of nuVizz, we've been working on creating what we call a network-based transportation management technology to cater to specifically on the last mile challenges that shippers and carriers face today. In today's conversation, we want to talk about, again, focusing on the last mile technology area and specifically focused around the carriers, because I know that's the audience we have here under the CLDA umbrella. But then not just limit to the carrier focus, but what impacts the carriers, their operations, their business, and how they should be looking at technology, right? Beyond managing their day-to-day operations. And that's what we're going to spend some time on that. And hopefully at the end of it, you will have a better appreciation for a broader look at the technology, not just in terms of your day-to-day operations, but in the essence of how you keep your business growing and attracting new business as things are changing. So before we get into that, I'll just take a few minutes just talking about nuVizz and what we do. Like I said, we started in 2011. We've been in business for about 13 years now, focusing on the last mile space, helping shippers on one side of the spectrum and the carriers and the logistics service providers on the other end in many, many different verticals. And one of the things that we, this is going to reflect in my conversations as we go along. When we looked at the last mile or the delivery ecosystem, we looked at it from a network aspect, not in the traditional sense of I am doing something within my four walls and then somebody else will do the next part. But we looked at how the physical world operates as a network, right? There are shippers, they have their own distribution centers, they have their own supply chain, they have their own network, and then they have stores, and then they have carrier partners like yourselves working with them, and the carriers have their own assets, agents and independent contractors, and then the end customers at the end of it. That is the network we are talking about. And the way we looked at the platform is to when something is moving from point A to point B, how do we help shippers and carriers, the network stakeholders, orchestrate that movement and provide visibility and provide information about that for all the stakeholders within that network, right? So as you see on the slide here, we do that with many, many different shippers in many different verticals. And also on the other side of the spectrum, the carriers, the LSPs, the 3PLs, the 4PLs, that operate in the space. And just looking at another way of looking at it from a LSP segment, we have some of the top customers in different verticals, whether it's auto parts distribution, pharma distribution, healthcare, which is one of our core verticals that we work in, retail, general shipper ecosystem, right? So we have customers in all of those. And then from an integration standpoint, we work with any of the best of breed systems like WMSs, TMSs, ERP systems out there in the world, as well as some of the niche, dispatch, delivery management software solutions that are out there. We also integrate with, a lot of those. And the last slide before we get into the core of the conversation today, this is what we do as a platform from beginning to end of managing your transportation ecosystem as a carrier, as a shipper, and in between, from order capture all the way to execution and settling financial transactions and everything in between. And that is what we do as a platform. So today, I want to say I'm not going to talk about AI, ML, how AI is going to change the world and how it's going to take all our jobs, right? I'm sure you have heard of this in many, many different forums to death. I'm hearing a collective sigh of relief. But what we are going to focus today in the next 15-20 minutes is about where are the carriers today, right? In terms of the business, what we have seen from our experience, right? Where they are, how do they operate today, how their business has changed over the years, and then extrapolate that and take the technology lens to that and how technology is changing, what they have in terms of technology, how they have traditionally looked at technology, and then how they should be looking at technology, right? That is the core of our focus today. And so let's dive into looking at the nature of the logistics service providers business today. So if you go back 5-10 years ago, it was not very uncommon that service providers would work with one shipper doing one type of business right? Maybe it's a healthcare shipper delivering to their customers, and every customer would get their delivery on the same day of the week at the same time. So many carrier service providers kind of operated in that fashion for a longest period we can think about. But now, when you look at carriers and the logistics service providers, pretty much, however small they are, everyone pretty much operate in many different business lines, whether it's business to consumer, or different models of delivery, whether hub and spoke or cross dock, multi-leg, final mile, residential delivery, and all of the different flavors that you can think of, right? That is what we see carriers are more and more, working in, many different facets of business delivery businesses. And at the same time, on the other end of their stakeholders, right, the shippers, we also see carriers, the LSPs working with the shippers in many different verticals, whether it's healthcare, auto parts, big and bulky, furnitures, appliances, small parcel, food, what have you, right? So why we are talking about this is that is, in essence, that changes the entire conversation about what carriers are, what they should be doing, what they should be prepared to do, right? No more the carriers are a one-dimensional entity, right? They operate in this complex network. On one side, having many different shippers. Why that is important is each one of those shippers, based on what they operate in, whether it's a healthcare, whether it's auto parts or what have you, they bring in different requirements in terms of how they want their business partners to operate, what information they want their business partners to provide, what SLAs and experiences, customer experiences they expect their carrier partners to provide, varies based on the shipper verticals. And the same thing goes with the different business lines. When you are delivering to B2B in a static model that we talked about, versus a residential delivery of pharmaceuticals or specialty pharma or what have you, they have completely different requirements right from the time of order capture to the time of customer experience and the communication and the whole 9 yards. So what that means is carriers are living in a more complex world today than ever before. And by the nature of working with many different partners upstream and downstream, that enforces the requirement to be more flexible in terms of how you operate your business. You cannot say this is how we are going to do the business and that is how we've been doing for the last 20 years. That's the only thing that we do. That is never going to cut it, right? The flexibility is the essence of the game today in terms of how you interact with your stakeholders upstream and downstream, right? And as you're talking about these complex networks, technology integrations become very important, because every one of them have a different level of expectation, different level of requirements in terms of how they want you to interact with them, right? And then finally, it's a last thing, but it's definitely not the least in the list of things, is we all in the middle of these macroeconomic headwinds that we are facing today. Logistics has been in the middle of this for the last 5, 10, 15 years, right? That is not going to change anytime. And every conversation that changes in the macro economy brings in a different set of requirements for shippers, that gets translated into carriers, right? And also from the other end of the spectrum, the customer expectations changing also adds requirements. So these are some of the changing landscape, that the LSPs today find themselves in, to set the stage for where we operate as service providers. So, but when we now take a step back and look at where, given all of that, where today the logistics service providers traditionally, historically, look at technology landscape, right? If you look at a big subset of the carrier ecosystem in terms of technology, what we see is most of the technologies that we leverage today, they're all one-dimensional technology, right? What I mean by that is, going back to my conversation, if you look at 15, 20 years ago, a lot of the LSPs were operating in a single vertical, working with maybe one or two different shippers in the same vertical, doing a single type of business service. So that, and the technologies were also designed to those specific niche use cases. They assumed this is how the world operates, and this is how the technology needs to work to cater to that world. So what that means is these technologies were designed as an all-in-one, right from beginning to end, cradle to grave solutions. When you have solutions like that, obviously they lack depth in each of the areas of the technology solutions they provide, capabilities that they provide, right? So that is what we see, the technologies being one-dimensional, designed for specific use cases, and without depth in any of each of those areas. And also, unfortunately, a lot of those technologies are stuck in terms of technology evolution, uh, 15, 20 years, where whenever they started, they are pretty much hanging on to that, right? What that means is it reduces the flexibility for the logistics service providers, right? And also another aspect of what we see traditionally in the logistics service providers, this is true in mid-sized, even some large-sized, LSP segment, is that they traditionally use these technologies as a mere data recording tools. So what I mean by that is, we get demand or orders from, our customers, we put it into the system, and we tell the system what we did with those orders. We tell the system what happened to those, right? It's basically used as a data recording tool. So you have all of that information in one place. That was the extent of the capabilities these technologies that traditionally provided. So they weren't really helping businesses to optimize, learn what is happening in their businesses, find opportunities to improve, and go after new businesses and all of that. So what that means, the result of this technology obsolescence means lost opportunity for a lot of these players, right? So invariably it forces you to operate in the area that you are comfortable in, and doesn't allow you to go after new businesses, because always the technology is hanging on, as acting like a bottleneck, and forcing you to not expand your view beyond what you do. So that created a lost opportunity for this segment. So with that background, so how do we look at, from a LSP segment, what is changing, right? If you think about technology evolution as it is changing every day at a much faster pace, delivery service providers are going to become or have to become as much of a technology company as much as a delivery service provider, right? Of course, you are providing the business, but at the same time, technology cannot be an afterthought where you think about it as something that you want to, track what is going on, but instead it has to be the front and center of your conversation of your business. That is going to be the way, uh, you know, the changing scope of what the logistics service providers will be looking at. So what does it mean, right? What does it mean for logistics service providers to operate in this new technology driven ecosystem, right? So the playbook has to start with, in my view, when you operate in the network model that we operate in today, transparency needs to be at the top of everything, right? So when you are working with, hundreds of different shippers, right, and there's a huge number of carrier partners in the middle, and then upstream and downstream agents and what have you, is a huge network. And we can no more say, you tell me what to do, I'll do it, and I'll pass you back the data, and somebody else will send that data next to the next partner and what have you. That is not going to cut it, right? The network ecosystem needs to operate in a transparent manner. What do we mean? I mean by that is everybody should be looking at the same piece of information at the same time without any translations applied to that information, right? So that creates transparency and that creates trust across different partners, and the technology that understands the network, right? I'm sure everybody's talked about digital twin and all of that, right? That's what it means, right? If a technology is able to create that, then it can create that transparency. And one of the beautiful things about the technology is that it democratizes the capabilities across everybody. So now you don't necessarily have to be an Amazon to think about providing your customers capabilities like Amazon, right? Because of the technology, it's becoming cheaper and cheaper as we speak, right? And so that gives you, so the only thing holding us back is not thinking big, right? So and like I said, you don't have to be really be big to think big, right? So that is, that needs to be the forefront of how logistics service providers think about their business, and they have to look at technology in a way that moves the needle, right? Positions them for growth. Again, look at technology not to see how it can run your business, but look at technology how it can grow your business, how it can help you take on new businesses, right? And like we've been talking about the network, does the technology understand the network? Does it operate in that ecosystem, right? And flexibility, right? That is the name of the game in terms of being flexible to operate and provide different capabilities for different stakeholders depending on where you operate and what their requirements are, right? And so this is kind of the network that we've been talking about, right? And we all operate in this cross section of this somewhere in between, right? And nobody is by operating by themselves. Everybody is operating in this network. And then in that case, why should technology be any different? Right? That is how, you need to be thinking about. And then once that technology understands that network, right, understands the stakeholders, how they operate with each other and all of that, then you get into the business capabilities of each of your business areas, whether it's integration with your partners, right? It's not one thing, it can be 100 different things, right? Providing visibility to your partners, again, it's not one thing. One shipper may want to know at the end of the day, one shipper may want to know every few minutes of the day and at different points in the execution or what have you. Does your technology scale go up and down in that spectrum? Again, same with the customer experience, right? Depending on different types of businesses and types of customers you're dealing with. How do you integrate the data in terms of financial, billing and settlement data up and downstream, right? In terms of operational efficiency, starting with the order capture, again, there could be 100 different variations. You may not even know, think about today, you may not be doing that. Doesn't mean that you're not going to do it tomorrow, right? Optimization, again, it's one word, but many different things depending on different use cases that you talk about and different verticals that you go after and different business services that you provide. Customer services and integration with upstream and downstream, execution, dispatch. Then once you look at technology from a network lens, then you can start layering all these different things in terms of these individual capabilities. Does your technology or has your technology has all the capabilities to go, from 0 to 100 in that spectrum, right? So that is what technology means today for most conversation. So continuing on that conversation, one of the things that is constant like ever before is the, only thing that is constant is the change. And that change is happening at a much faster rate as we speak. And the only way to survive in any business, let alone in the delivery business, is to embrace the change, right? If we do not embrace the change will envelop us, right? And the technology evolution is faster. The change in technology is happening much faster than it's happening in any other aspects of our lives, right? And something that was latest and greatest 6 months ago may not be even exist today, or maybe in version 15 as we speak. So when you look at your partner, are they thinking about technology in the same vein, or they look at technology as a once done and dusted, right? So the embracing of technology is the key today in helping anyone to play in the big leagues, right? Again, going back to my other previous conversation, it is not about cost, right? The technology has completely democratized those capabilities, right? It's how we look at it, right? And no more technology is a once done and forgotten thing, right? It is not about does it support my business today. And with the evolution of technology and every day, you need to be looking at bringing in a partner that looks at it in the same vein. And unfortunately, it's not as easy as as we talk about it, but you have to put technology in the front of it, as you must put as much emphasis on the technology as you put it on your business services itself, right? So we are not even talking about here things about autonomous vehicles and all the great things that are probably coming down the line in the near future. So think about when that happens, how do you define a delivery service provider, right? The role and the things that you will be doing will completely change, right? And the only thing that can differentiate you from another provider is the technology, right? Because you will be dealing less and less with service oriented, whether it's drivers or whether it's resources or what have you, right? So that is kind of the broader message here to kind of think about technology in that vein, right? Think about technology as not as within the four walls, but more as a network entity that mimics the physical world that we operate in. So, quick takeaways to think about the businesses, and especially in terms of technology. Look at your existing business and see what is holding you back. If I have to go after a new business today, whatever it is, right? Whatever vertical, whatever types of business delivery service, what have you, what is holding me back? Is it my business capabilities, or is it my technology, right? I think that's the first step in kind of taking stock of where you are and what is holding you back. And then how do you look at evaluating technologies, right? To my earlier point, even before putting the business requirements, because you only know the business requirements that you are aware of today, right? And you're not going to think about 10 years or even 2 years down the line what might come down the pipe. So the way we look at technology, evaluating technology has to completely change, right? Does technology understand my business ecosystem first? Does it understand what is happening here, right? Then once that is, you're sure about that, then you kind of go, as we talked about, go down to the nitty-gritties of each of the business areas. Can it do all of those different things, right? Again, is it going to evolve? What is the history of that evolution, right? That is very important than the current situation or where they are. And then, technology to make it work, you can look at new businesses where you can go after, right? Without technology being a bottleneck for any new conversation, right? You can easily sign up for new requirements from different shippers or different service lines to be able to provide those capabilities through the technology investments that you have made, right? And again, it is not about how we operate today. We don't know what is coming tomorrow. I'm sure it's changing, and it's changing at a much faster pace, right? And how do you future proof your business from technology absolute sense, right? So the business as it exists today might be, I am sure, will be very different from what the business looks like in a year or 2 years or 3 years down the line, right? So the only way to be able to, keep up with that is to work with somebody that has a same understanding of the worldview, right? And doesn't look at technology as one time once done, right? One time thing, but an evolving thing. Unfortunately, that is the real reality of the world that we all live in, right? And being able to adapt to those changing needs has to be driven with technology vision, right? And choosing the right partner in being able to do that. So again, like I said, this is more about the broader uh, how the logistics service providers are operating today, how the technology is impacting, right? What is coming down the line, and how you as business owners have to be looking at technology, right? In terms of leveraging, in terms of evaluating, in terms of growing your business, and hopefully given some food for thought in thinking on those lines, right? So that's my time. Appreciate your attention, and we have a few minutes. If there are any questions, conversations that you want to have, I'll be more than happy to do that. Uh, and since we have some more time here.
Yeah, thank you, Guru, so much for that. Please feel free to use the Q&A function if you have a question, or you can raise your hand and I can take you off mute. I do have one here for you. As a technology vendor, who do you mainly focus on, the shipper or carrier?
That's a good question. My answer is, you know, invariably both, right? So that is going back to my earlier conversation. That's one of the shortfalls, if you will, of a lot of the technologies that existed today. They looked at these stakeholders in isolation. They created technology solutions for carriers. That means, it kind of isolated them from everything else, right? And created solutions for shippers that isolated them from the others, right? So no technology is complete in today's world unless it looks at all the stakeholders, right? So that is how we look at our technology. This technology is not about enabling carriers, because they are not operating in vacuum. They are working with different shippers that bring on new requirements, different requirements with every shipper business or what have you. I, as a technology, have to be thinking about those shippers as well when I'm creating a solution for carrier, and vice versa, right? So when I'm selling a solution to the shipper, shippers are not doing the work. The carriers are doing the work for them. So the technology has to be able, should have all the abilities or the capabilities for the carrier to do their work, to give the carriers the visibility and the requirement data and everything that they are looking for. So to answer your question, we look at the entire ecosystem and not as individual. Of course, we sell to both stakeholders in different conversation, but at the end of the day, we also have the understanding of the network, right? All the stakeholders that are at the end of the day leveraging that information.
Thank you. Another question we got here was, how do you see carriers' role changing, if any, with the changing technology landscape?
Um, that it is definitely going to change, right? It's changed drastically, dramatically in the last few years, right? One example we talked about, it's become from a single dimensional operation to a multi-dimensional business, right? Looking at different types of businesses, different types of verticals, and bringing in their own requirements. And then down the line, as I alluded to earlier, the delivery companies, delivery services companies will become more of technology companies, right? With the autonomous vehicles and everything, I can see that be playing a big role in at least in the delivery space first, right? Because that caters really well for the delivery ecosystem, right? As they become, uh, more mainstream, right? The definition of the business service provider itself is going to change, right? They're going to become orchestrators. They become, orchestrating the whole thing by leveraging technology. So the technology has to be in the forefront of any conversation for every business under the sun, right? And more so for the delivery service providers.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions from the audience, whether you put it in the actual Q&A chat or raise your hand and I can unmute you. Maybe while you think of that, I am going to take over real quick, just for some upcoming reminders here for everyone. So some events we have coming up, actually tomorrow, our member roundtable on website optimization. Next week, we have another webinar, so 2 this month, on why your team needs conflict diffusing skills and how to get them. And then next month on September 10th, our webinar on how to spot red flags in your insurance coverage. So hope that you can join us for one, if not all of these events, and registration is live on the CLDA website. Another event I do always have to plug here is our Final Mile Forum. So it's not too early to start making, or at least marking this on your calendar for February 18th through 20th. We'll be in Austin, Texas, and hope to connect with you. Our exhibitor and sponsor registration is set to open in the coming week, so keep an eye on your email inboxes for that if you're interested in exhibiting or sponsoring the event. Doesn't look like I saw any other questions come in or anyone raise their hand, but I do just want to thank both Guru and everyone for joining us today, and hope that you all enjoy the rest of your week. Bye.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.